So, time to start. I think, perhaps it was time to start already a minute or two ago, but I think we're doing quite fine. Allow me just to stand up here at first. I will sit down also, but as we can see from the program, it says 2 hours of discussion, so there will be plenty of chance to sit down. Just a few very introductory words from me. My name is Morten Hansen from the Stockholm School of Economics and the FICIL Council, and I've been accepting to be the moderator here today, because I think there is a very interesting event coming up, obviously. Before I say a little bit about how we will proceed, and also say a few words about our panelists here today, then just a little bit about what I sort of envisage from the meeting here today. And I don't know about the rest of the panelists, but it's pretty tough lights up there, right? It's a little bit hard to look in your direction. I actually cannot see who you are, but sorry about that. Great to see you, though. So it's one of those where it says competitive advantage, and I could imagine that many of you, having been here in these discussions, would say, hey, we have discussed this about 100 times before. And yes, I think so, we have, but what makes me intrigued about this one is that we go somewhat deeper this time, and we also have another focus on it, and this time more on compliance. It speaks about that Latvia has been moving over the years. We don't have to talk about normal competitiveness perhaps all that much, but now we can go deeper with a stronger focus instead, and that certainly pleases me. We will not have all that many presentations today, actually only one, and therefore I want it to be more discussion based. That's also where sort of, you know, the tough job of a moderator comes up. Try to ensure that people don't speak for too long. Okay, thank you, yeah. We will engage you in the audience also, and even though I guess most of you know each other, I still think that the nicest way to start is this here by, you know, name and affiliation, and especially this here that we up here almost cannot see who you are from here, right? And then, if you sort of look at this, shall we say, little PowerPoint slide, we have put down some points here, and these are the things that we would like to discuss today, and that we also would like to see if we can come to an end of. I don't think we will solve all sorts of problems that we have, but could we come a little bit closer, then I think it would be very nice. I would really like there with the conclusion in the end to have some sort of little bit of concrete, if not action plan, then some bullets of what we could be dealing with. That said, I think we should go to, you know, a short presentation of who we are, right? I will simply take it from left to right as I see it there. So we have Zlata Elksnina Zashirinska, PwC and FICIL. We have Santa Purgaile from the Financial and Capital Markets Commission. Then we have, it's a little bit hard to see him, Kaspars Roškalns from the Investment and Development Agency, but we are confident that he will be there in just a sec. Right? And to the right, we have the Financial Intelligence Unit, represented by Ilse Snotenja, and also Pauls Iljenkovs. Don't worry if Ilse suddenly slips away. It's most likely not because she finds it boring to be here today, but she has to be in a Zoom meeting also with the Prime Minister. So she might be out at some stage, but she might also come back again. And then, as we always will say, last but not least, and I really mean it, but if we go even further to the right, you can see a screen over there where we have Reinhold Schneider from the company Schwenk, who will come and talk to us or deal with us, but he has here to be via Zoom. We are mostly not surprised. I think that there is also some Zoom involved. Otherwise, quite frankly, I should say, I'm super happy to be here and see some real people. Right? It's been half a year without that. That being said, I will take my seat. We should just remember this here, that due to that this is also on Facebook, whenever somebody wants to speak, there has to be a microphone. So when the floor is given to you there in the audience, there will be a couple of persons coming with microphones that you can speak into. So everything has to be via microphones, and we up here, we even have a microphone each. You don't have that privilege, but then again, you are not in the panel, of course. Enough from me, I think. Moderator will try to rest a little bit. We will try to go into sort of our first issues here, and we will start with this thing that was, it was the biggest news, I would say, for this economy this year. that we avoided the gray list. Thank you very much to the Financial Intelligence Unit. And before we could start celebrating that, then something else showed up. I will not name its name. You all know what it's like. But I think we should come back to this here in terms also dealing with compliance, to have a little overview of, but where are we now, what has happened, where are we right now, and that is therefore why, Ilse, I would like to give the floor to you and to the presentation that you have. The only, as I said, only presentation with slides that we have today, so floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for inviting me here. It's a great honor and excitement for me to see you all again. You know, I'm coming from your family, so I feel myself very natural to be here. On the other hand, Zlata might probably tell you that this preparation of this discussion was not so easy. It was quite a struggle for us because for the first time since I started to head FIU Latvia, I felt myself that I need to receive some more information from investors. I felt myself requiring more facts because there are so many complaints around that investors, and not only foreign investors but also domestic investors, feel themselves in quite a struggle with the requirements between compliance and competition, and this is something that I wanted by this discussion, when we started to think about that this discussion is needed, we wanted to kind of like put some spotlight on this, whether these activities that we are doing right now, whether these activities are somehow endangering investors, you, or any other investors, or these are activities just to clean up the house and in that way, not only to increase prosperity, but also security of our country, security of your investments, security of all around us, including global financial sector. So why I made this presentation, as Morten already explained, I will have to leave in 20 minutes, but you know FIU is a great team. So I will be substituted by my colleague Paulis and Toms, who is sitting there, because we have so many things to tell you, and I hope that you will ask the questions to us, and we will be able to somehow really to explain what has been done and what we achieve to do in the future. So let's start with the main issue. I think something that very many for us already heard this, very many representatives of different international organizations have heard this and we explained to them, but not really Latvian investors, not really Latvian businesses. So I think it's very important to explain how FIU Latvia made, together with the public sector representatives and private sector as well, made or prepared, drafted national risk assessment, and what kind of conclusions we got out of this activity. We started from the point when, you know, what was the biggest trigger for reforms of Latvian AML CFT system. These were triggered by two events. One was ABLV liquidation that followed FinCEN announcement in 2018. And another one was the same year in 2018, we had Moneyval assessment that basically where Latvia received mostly failed marks. And these two events made us think that there is something wrong with our understanding of risks and mitigation activities of the risks, or mitigating activities of the risks. And therefore, and at that time, we thought that our main problem, main issue is the wrong perception that we should be some kind of bridge between East and West, and mainly in the sector of financial services, meaning we have to establish as many banks who can speak Russian and service Russian-speaking clients. I think it's already quite clear that government is not aiming anymore to say that this is our main goal. We are not saying that we want to be a financial center for such type of activity. That was made quite clear in 2018 when there was a prohibition of cooperation with were servicing shell companies. There was a huge activity of banking sector to de-risk their clientele. But what I'm trying to say right now and what I'm coming to is that this is not the only risk profile that we are having. Risk profile of financial centers. We are having another risk profile, which is risk profile that comes out of the crimes, predicate offense, corruption, fraud, tax crime, and some other organized crime activities. Why it's important to understand also for you, because we are trying to really deal with those that are making criminal activities, that are included. Hello, Kaspars, you can join us. So. Hello, Kaspars. So we are trying to go after those who are abusing our financial institutions by abusing this financial center of Latvia, and also we are trying to go after the crimes that are the criminals that are profiting from different organized crime activities. Unfortunately, I said that I will see what's there, but I cannot see what's there. So therefore, I will try to read out not read out, but tell you as much as possible from my memory what we try to why this is so important. So we right now are basically dealing with the heritage that we had, because of this financial center, of the idea of financial center, which means that there are a lot of money, a lot of illicit funds that came as a transit flows from east to west, and these funds came through Latvian banking system, and some of those funds right now are stuck in some banks in liquidation process, which means that everything, thank you, thank you. I thought that I'm younger, but not anymore. So these funds that came as a transit flows, that came not as a real economic activity, but that came just to basically launder the money that was acquired as a result of corruption, tax fraud, simple fraud in eastern part from Latvian border. These funds are here, and we are trying to freeze them. We are trying to seize them when we send the information to the police. But this is not the main task that we want to do right now. The main task what we want to do is to really to fight with organized crime, corruption, public procurement, some other crimes that are abusing European Union economy, abusing Latvian economy, that are doing or that are putting some bad sign on our ability to fight the crime. What we have done so far.
Sorry, just a little comment from me, just to show that the moderator is around us. But very interesting what you say. So could we put it like this and say that some of your tasks are more or less over? All this, shall we say, the old things about big money flows, but that you are moving into new tasks that you have to deal with instead, so to speak.
Thank you for this question. Indeed, I try to somehow explain something that is so natural for me, but maybe not so natural for investors. Yes, indeed, we are right now vested with the duty to fight that old heritage, to deal with that old heritage. It's not anymore after those 2 years of reforms of AML CFT system that this is problem at this moment. I think we have to put our eye on some different crimes, some different illicit economic activity, not what we are doing right now. So we try to freeze as much those illicit funds that are in the banks, but our future activity will be aimed at some domestic crime, some tax fraud, corruption, public procurement fraud, other activities that are abusing investment climate here in Latvia. So if I may, I think it took already too long for me. I think it's necessary to go forward with my main kind of like remarks on what we are achieving to do right now, what we are aiming to do right now, and what we try to do, what we will try to do in the future. I think one thing is that everybody already noticed we have so many complaints about maybe sometimes unnecessary requirements from the banking sector, some unnecessary and too tough requirements from the government. And it's quite clear that one of the main messages right now is how to balance and how to apply true risk-based approach to the economies, to the businesses here in Latvia, whether the real business deserves to receive the same requirements, to receive the same requests from the banks as the business who is clearly a shell company or some kind of like strawman activity. I think it's still a lot to do at this stage, and we are still try to learn and try to balance between this success that we achieved by basically applying international standard and by trying to be as competitive as possible, not only as a businesses, but also as a country. We need also to have more mutual understanding between governments and the private sector. There should be an open dialogue. There should be a very clear understanding of the private sector that it is impossible for the governments to understand where are the gaps, what kind of mistakes we have made, where should be some kind of like a bit more relaxed rules put in place if there will be not open dialogue and not, so to say, facts put on the table, what companies suffered from different or unproportional requests from the banks or any other institutions. What reasons were there why businesses are not interested in investing more in Latvia? So these type of questions are right now on our table, and we try to balance them with the fact that there is still ongoing monitoring process from Moneyval. We are still in a process of regaining our reputation back, and there is still a possibility that if we will not control tough enough, then it is possible to have another scandal, and that might mean for us a bit more bitter, so to say, result. From FIU side, we as the lead or central authority in an AML CFT system, we are the ones who have made a lot of effort to try to call together different representatives from the private sector, from public sector. We are the ones who are leading supervisory platform who calls together all 11 supervisors that are supervising different sectors in Latvia. We are also calling together law enforcement agencies also to have a balanced approach towards the investigation and enforcement. And we also are leading very successful public-private partnership platform. That's not enough. That's clearly not enough. And what is our suggestion for the future, and we hope that our government will approve this, is that we have to make some kind of AML center, AML hub. AML Academy is the name right now. It's not still yet decided whether it will be academy or something else, but in this or within this institution, we are suggesting to our counterparts that there should be some kind of financial ombudsman for the legal, for the companies, for businesses, as a place, as an arbitration place for any kind of disputes that businesses have with the financial sector, some financial institutions, who are basically abusing the risk-based approach application. As a final remark, just very quick remark, I want to explain and I want to make sure that you all, colleagues, friends, understand that you as a real business should not be afraid of what we are doing as FIU. It's been quite a lot of PR activity that FIU is trying to somehow to endanger the business, endanger the investment, and we cannot agree to this. Our disagreement to this lies in the fact that we are not freezing real investment. We are freezing transit cash flows. From the right side, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, right side, you see the picture from the Latvian Investment Agency, and Kaspars can say that this picture shows that what kind of countries have invested in Latvia, and you see that there are names like Finland, Denmark, Germany, Lithuania, Estonia, some other European countries. And then here is another chart that shows how much of these, or the investment from these countries have been frozen by FIU in last 8 months in 2020. And you see that the countries which are suffering most from FIU activities, if I may say so, are BVI, United Arab Emirates, Cyprus, Great Britain, and it's not Great Britain as Great Britain. Vic, I don't see you here, but believe me, these are mostly Scottish LLPs. So some, and again, shell companies with EU origin. Then yes, Latvia as well, Seychelles, Moldova, Marshall Islands, Dominicana, Belize, Hong Kong, Georgia, and other. This is very important to understand. These are not the real investments. These are transit flows from companies established in tax havens. From one company to another, then another and another, and the network is really huge. And these companies are the companies that we are trying to avoid. These are not investments that we want to have here. These are investments that unfortunately abuses all the environment of foreign or domestic investors. This is something to be made very clear. If such investment comes in Latvia, then of course it is with higher possibility, higher potential that this is not real economic activity. This is just a transit flow. And finally, my final slide before I go away for some hour is you see the results of activity of FIU. And this is something that might probably scare you. How come that just in 8 months, FIU was able to freeze around 400 million euros? If compared to 2017, for example, FIU has frozen just 46 million in all year, in a whole year, then I think that it is also needs to be stressed out that 314 of them is funds in banks that are in the liquidation process, which again comes or boils down to the fact that we are dealing with the heritage that we want to clean up, to deal with this, and to forget that issue, not come back to this issue anymore, and to deal with the real issues that FICIL was always requesting government to do. To deal with tax fraud, to deal with corruption, to deal with the fraud in public procurement. This is something where FIU sees its role its growing role in helping law enforcement agencies, in helping KNAB, in helping SRS police, but not so many to deal anymore with those funds that flew here from the different tax havens and just using one single point, bank account in Latvia. So thank you for listening to me. It took me longer than expected, but I hope that it was quite clear. We are not trying to endanger real investors. You are very welcomed here, and we want to facilitate your investment. We want to help you, and FIU is always ready to answer any of your requests. If you need our advice, please call us.
Thanks a lot, Ilse. And yeah, of course I was thinking about the time, but I think you should have this time to create this as background for us. I will nevertheless also try to tease you a little bit, and I thought, okay, I will change my way of doing this a little bit, doing some ping pong, going to the investors instead, and perhaps going to Reinhold, since you're sitting there with us with Zoom, because as Ilse said, don't be afraid of the FIU. And then I was thinking, it's a little bit like when I read this fairy tale when I was young, when the wolf says to Little Red Riding Hood, don't be afraid, right? I have this feeling that investors sometimes are a little bit afraid. So Reinhold, it's going to be very unfair right now when I say to you, please, just 2, 3, possibly 4 minutes. But as I understand, you are fairly new to Latvia yourself. So could you name a couple of things that have surprised you positively or negatively that we can put into our discussion in terms of these here compliance rules that we have in Latvia?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Martin. And we are not afraid of FIU, that I can tell you. And because I'm personally, but also my company is a big fan of compliance. And to be honest, we're not facing big issues regarding this financial compliance when we came here last year. So I'm also more or less here now 18 months, and also Frank as a company is here 18 months, and we feel very welcome in the country. And of course, there were a lot of good reasons to come here at all. So first of all, it's always, you need to have the opportunity, and we had the opportunity to invest here in Latvia, buying the assets from Cemex at that time. But we saw also good surroundings. So we saw a very positive development in last years, and this continued, of course, this year regarding all the compliance to the money wall, which was important for us. And we saw that Latvia has a good credit rating, and we saw that Latvia has, in the regard of tax policy, a good policy that the earnings you reinvest into the business are tax-free. So those were things which we felt we are welcome. And in terms of this financial compliance, as I said, we are not afraid of that. And during the acquisition process, which happened more or less beginning of last year, we were facing not so big obstacles regarding the requirements, at least not at the beginning. What we were facing, and which was quite surprising, is that the requirements coming from Latvia and Lithuania were quite different, or from the bank sector coming, or from the banks who we were working with were quite different. So that was one observation, which I think worth to talk about, that in that case, Lithuanian bank sector had much higher requirements, which took us even a couple of weeks to take care of, and that could be sometimes a difficult time if you spend 2 weeks in such a process with those requirements. But at the end, we dealt with it, and I think it's very important for Latvia and for the Baltics to comply those with the Moneywall standards. And thank you also, of course, to the FIU and Ilse and everybody involved into that, because this helps, I think, also to protect our investments. What I also think is a very good approach now, and what I understand Ilse is now targeting is really to make a little bit of a shift from looking mainly at the banking sector and anti money laundering issues and so on, but looking more at financial crimes and looking more into tax crimes, and because we see there is room for improvement. And as I said, I'm a big fan of compliance, and I think we can't be compliant enough, but then of course we need to be on a level playing field with our competitors, with all other industries, and there I think we can move now, if possible, the focus from mainly the bank sector to different sectors and look into topics of organized crime, tax crime, and probably also maybe those are topics we can discuss today, but also tomorrow, and I think in the upcoming weeks, because there I think, as I said, we can do more. And we as investors always want to contribute to that, that there is a better compliance in general of the companies, but also that we support the law enforcement authorities to better follow up those crimes.
Okay, thank you. I mean, you are obviously very polite, I must say, but very nice. I'd like to then.
Now, when you're new to a country, you have to be polite. So that's
Yeah, but you're sitting so far away that we can't even catch you if we wanted to. Anyway, before I go to the audience, also I would like to go through the panel, but I could ask Zlata, for instance, because you have, perhaps compared to Reinhold, very, very long experience here from Latvia, and therefore not any of the old issues and so on, but you could be looking at, has something, things have been resolved, but where do you see, again, in a couple of minutes if you can, what is 1-2 bullets where you think that something is lacking or should be improved?
Sure, thank you very much. Colleagues, good afternoon. I mean, my role today is to be provoking, and to provoke all of us to think, to discuss, and to be in a dialogue. And I would put several thoughts. I think for what is important for the investors. For investors, it is important that the whole cycle is having the same quality, which means from sort of the freezing of the funds until the execution, and we know about sort of the process, we understand how the process is going, and we understand what is the outcome of the process. This is one which is important for the investors. Second of all, I really would like to put it as a challenge. Ilse rightly mentioned that we are the most of the activities which FIU was dealing and FCMC was dealing before relates actually with the history. And my question is on the compliance, can we use the same harsh approach which we had for the historical situation actually to work on the situation which is going forward? Is this the same, or we need to adjust our approach to something else? And third of all, are we really so rich to be able to, each and individual companies invest in the compliance functions at all, or we are a small country and therefore need to find a ways how we could be effective in all of the compliance stages, synergizing, standardizing, and relating the process to the whole society. So
I will have just to jump in here because I like what you say, and I'm just, I don't know anything. I'm not an investor, right? I'm just a lecturer. We don't know very much. Why could we not make a handbook of, this is how you comply? Or is this a stupid question from me?
No. I think that I think it's would be very interesting for all of us to discuss is that we know that there are industries which are really very tightly regulated, which are really have, if you go there is the fence and then you will get a shot, and then you get a bill, like a penalty bill. But there are some industries as well which still hasn't realized actually that we are living in the compliant society. So, and that makes actually, I think, the double standard moral which is not acceptable, and we all understand it. So the question here, what I would like to bring is not that we as an investors do not understand that we need to comply. I think this is not the issue. I think how we could create the environment that compliance is the culture rather than a penalty bill. Yeah, and that it is standardized, and what is better, to over-regulate some and not regulate all, or it is better to have the standard approach to everyone so that the culture is there, we understand what we're doing. So this is stopping, otherwise, so.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, quite frankly, it's not so concrete, but I think it's very interesting. But not concrete, but that's perhaps what it can be made. That it's the idea. What do you were nodding, Santa, right? We need to also the state side to step in now. It's sort of the ones that we should not be afraid of, but most likely we are afraid of, right? What would you have, perhaps follow up on Zlata, but also follow up on what Ilse had to say?
Yeah, good afternoon. It's also my pleasure to be here. Definitely, I think we should look at all those issues in sort of like time frame and like the time flow. And actually, all those events like years back triggered us to fall into the big hole. And this falling into the big hole was very rapid, and we were forced to introduce as tough requirements as possible to really understand that all and every society member understands where we are and what we should do. Now, we don't have any like mechanisms. We are just scrambling out of this hole to get to the road back, and and this will take time. And what I see that all those discussions sort of they are enhancing, but they are also like growing in a bit different shape. As maybe a year ago there was a real screaming also from the financial sector that there is like there's a messy regulation, and we really don't understand how should we implement those rules. We've gone through that, and now we have developed the manual. We have discussed that with the financial institutions, so we understand that at least part of people working in the banks start to understand. And we are now in the discussions, what does it mean from rules-based culture to the risk-based culture? And what kind of approach should we introduce now? How to evaluate the risk? How to put and classify the customers, and then just put the efforts towards the high-risk customer and let go the very low-risk customers, and have some monitoring for middle-risk customers. And this is the way how now discussions have evolved, and I believe that this we will need more. We still need more time to really promote this compliance culture into each and every society member. That's why now this is perfect that we have this discussion. After the next week, we will have other discussion also moderated by Finance Latvia, where we still will come together and discuss different, problematic issues and what should we do. So. I see that still we are here to have those flags saying that there is zero tolerance against corruption, zero tolerance against tax avoidance. So, and we will build our system, and the financial institutions, banks will have this the mechanisms how to find and to see where some kind of those illegal activities might happen. And that's why banks will ask if some suspicious activity will happen in your accounts. But also, which is very, very important, that banks communicate. Banks also are advisors to to businesses. banks consult first prior just, closing the account. And because I also understand that there is some lack of information in the business world where, to really evaluate each and every business partner, understand how clean and transparent is my customer. So, but definitely I think this is still, we are very, we have made very good steps towards the, this culture, to achieve this culture, but this is, still years to implement that towards when we will sort of be able to say that each and every society member understands what does it mean, the compliance culture.
And thanks a lot for that again. I will also myself be a little bit provocative by saying, but it was not so concrete, right? But I think it's a super point, this about changing the culture. But if we then sort of put out the question, how do you change a culture? Then we're sitting here and sort of not knowing exactly which way, what to do. You're doing it from the state side, right? And I think fair enough to say a lot has been done in recent years. It's been coming fast in the past few years, but it's also a two-way game, right? It also has to be with the investors. So again, perhaps later we could discuss, is it, as you say, lack of information out there? Is it this year about that some companies, very easy, they will comply no matter what, but then again, there are also others that can come from strange countries, so to speak, where it's just more tricky, right? Yeah.
If I may,
yeah,
so
sure.
Definitely, if I look from my perspective now, I should say that there is just couple of percentage of like totally transparent, absolutely white and fluffy companies where everything is in place. And what does it mean, compliance culture? Definitely, there is like the culture each company promotes that. We are not going to engage in corruption, we are not going to avoid taxes, and we will not make any schemes in our company to do so. Even not like having like, if we do like 1%, this is okay, if I do 10%, maybe this is not okay. And this is about understanding either 1% of illicit activities is okay, or 10% activities is okay. Where is the border? And this is about the culture, what we are now sort of, where are we going to? Of course, maybe this is some kind of illusory to think that we will become country with no tax avoidances and no crime, no financial crime. But higher the target you put, maybe better you are in your achievements.
Thanks.
Maybe I could...
Zlata? Yeah. Short one, right?
Actually...
short one, right?
Yeah, very short. I think it's... actually, it stands... there was a sort of discussion around, what is the priority around in the state. So I do think that in order to be efficient in all of the... and really get the target, we need to prioritize. So, and I do think that what was done with the past is great. So let's prioritize the future as well. So what do we want to tackle at first? Because, only when their large activities are not happening, then the people who are doing the small activities will believe that this is not right. So, and my question is exactly that if we are shooting for all the targets, we might miss all of them. So if we're shooting on the particular target with the standardized approach, we might get the majority of them. Yeah, so and therefore prioritizing, I think, would be the great sort of component to this discussion.
And again, this year, so we shouldn't be afraid of the FIU and we shouldn't be afraid of the FCMC. Still have this feeling that some they are, but then one organization that investors should see as a friend, that's the Investment and Development Agency, right? There's nothing to fear. What I'm interested in with you, Kaspars, is this year that given sort of the enhanced role of the FIU and the FCMC, does that lead to that the work for you in the investment development agency has become easier, or that you have changed, let's say, approach in terms of getting companies to come to Latvia? Or was that clear enough? I'm not sure, right?
Yeah, well, definitely the investors complain on the financial sector overall. It is probably the second biggest problem after getting employees. That is number one, and then the electricity bill is number three, more or less. Depends on each company. But then when we go back to the prioritizing, we figure out, okay, from which countries do we want to have the investors? And then if we focus on specific sectors like IT, shared service centers, smart city solutions, smart materials, etc., and you see those multinationals that are interested in this high-tech development, then, and they're mostly actually from OECD countries that we target, then for them to open the bank account is maybe a little bit frustrating if we look at the, let's say, big company arrives and they expect that we're gonna lay down whatever we have, and then they just sign here, and then 20 seconds later they have a bank account. However, from our side, it's like banking is asking, okay, full disclosure, what do you have there, and what's this transaction to Cyprus? And then they're like a little bit frustrated, and there's definitely some problem, and there's definitely a way how to deal with that. However, let's say currently, when we see that and this goes back to our like Latvian nation, let's say some our individualities, let's say when really big storm is coming, then somehow we can get around the table and figure out quickly the way how to deal with that. And it's in all the industries, in all the major players. For example, currently we're working on this Belarusian IT company relocation to Latvia, at least partly relocating, and we're promoting that as a potential their hub to European Union. And obviously, before this Belarusian crisis, bank account, if you had some relations to Belarus, maybe now. But currently, we figured out that actually there's no problem to issue visas in 2 days. There was nothing need to be changed. We just needed to get the right people around the table and say, hey, this is priority, and can we do it? And if we have a political support, it was done easily. And the same will happen in this case with IT companies who will want to open a bank account. I truly believe that the banking is not going to be the biggest obstacle, at least for the short term. And then we can see this the success stories, and we can build the investment attraction from those success stories. Then we can see this, yes, we had a problem with the banking. Yes, we're working on the long-term solutions. However, on the short term, we have some steps that we can show and promote to the world that it is not totally impossible to open a bank account in Latvia. And we see also the bigger banks, they're interested in this side of the business, especially because they understand that if, let's say, those companies will move, there's nothing for them to just drive down to Šiauliai, open the bank account and drive back. So it's okay, an extra 2 hours, but that's it. And in this perspective, the business is going to add to this, and business is going to try to push from the other side to support the regulation, because we're totally pro regulation, we're totally pro this compliance culture. However, from let's say our side, we also have to show some small steps in between, so there is some success stories.
Okay, thanks a lot. Then I will go to the audience. It's a little bit unfair to the other two guys from FIU, but hey, you're a team at the FIU and you still have used more time than anyone else, right? So, but we will come back to you. See, I'm still sort of trying to push for, and I know it's very difficult, because if it was easy, there was no reason to be here today. Everything would be solved, everybody would be happy, and so on. It is difficult stuff this year. So from my panel, I've gotten interesting ideas, but I don't think I haven't gotten bullet points, I think. So what I will give you the chance to, that is, but it'll be very constrained, I'll give you a chance to express one thing, just one, not two, not three, but just one thing, concrete issue that you find that is a problem in terms of compliance. And I'll make it even more restricted, not about bank accounts. We've heard about that one. But if somebody has something where they would say, I have a concrete problem in terms of compliance, this is what it is, then I'd like to hear it. And then we could perhaps address it from up here. I don't know if issues like that exist. We will try to find out. If you have something you would like to add with this, briefly, then please put up your hand and somebody will come with a microphone to you. Yeah, I was just about to be afraid of that there were no problems out there and hey, we can stop the meeting right now, right?
I think the first, but definitely not the last. First of all, my name is Andris Lazdiņš. I'm the co-head of FICIL Economic and Financial Issues Work Group. So first of all, thank you very much for this very important discussion. We have evaded the gray listing, but still the work needs to be done. So thank you about that. I think about one topic of discussion that we haven't addressed, and it's about this implementing the compliance culture, which is extremely important task. I agree with Morten. We need to be more specific about that because we all want to get there, and the question is how to do it. One thing is about this whole society perception of corruption. I was actually very surprised to see that last year in the corruption perception index we were lower than in 2018. So that 2019 was the scoring, and gray cloud was looming above us, but still somehow society hasn't changed. One thing how we perhaps could do that is just to show this specific link between crime and punishment. We hear tons of big corruption cases being instigated by KNAB, either in Riga municipality, also in other sections, but we don't see actually a quick, efficient way how that is dealt with. Either somebody gets sentenced or just released, but it just drags on and on. So yeah, we don't have like real law enforcement agencies in terms of police and prosecution, but what would be your comments about this? How we could tackle that, because to see that if you do something wrong, you will get punished, but in a due process and actually very quickly. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, to the point. Should we have one more before we perhaps address it up here? And it seems to be, yeah. We'll take those two then, or...
Thank you very much. My name is Govert-Jan Bijlevroe, Ambassador of the Netherlands. Latvia is of course not developing its compliance culture in isolation. So there are examples throughout Europe. My question is to FCMC and FIU and LIA. How do you go about this? How do you learn from other compliance experiences around Europe or perhaps elsewhere? Thank you.
Okay, good question, I think. And the question was to all of you except Zlata, but I don't know, shall we say, Sandra, if you want to start addressing this question.
Yeah,
and you can also feel free to address the one before, this law enforcement thing, perhaps that's also up to you. Yeah? No, not close enough, okay.
I think, yeah, of course, we are not living in an isolated world, and all what's happening in terms of compliance and AML, actually, this is very much related on what's happening all across the world. And yes, in somehow in the situation back there forced us to be some kind of front runners in really understanding and implementing things and approaches where actually other world and even other European countries still wasn't like the today's agenda. But what I see from my perspective that for example, my colleague, the supervisor in Lithuania, just posted in her profile in Facebook that she's also now taking part in one local conference in Vilnius. And this is the absolutely the same topic about the balancing. There is huge pressure from the businesses, and there is a compliance and AML and everything like that. And actually, I also listen and hear that now this has become an agenda topic for all Europe, And what I see that there is cases also we are hearing about some German banks and you know, society and some maybe even scandals in some sort of, but definitely what I wanted to say that maybe yes, where we was in the front run, but now actually I think now we are gaining that we are, you know, some way for, you know, before everyone already gets to that. Yeah, it was tough for some businesses, that was tough for some time and period of you know, dealing with that. But I also see that as a competitive advantage that we are, you know, we understand already how this, you know, all system already works in our country. But I also want to say that there is still huge steps towards balancing, towards some kind of, you know, also like enforcement things, some kind of, you were asking about like real cases, you know, starting with some kind of big scandals and real, you know, answers where it ended up. And yeah, maybe colleagues from FIU can more address those ones.
Yeah, so feel free to decide between you who will speak.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I will start, and then Tom's maybe will continue on both the issues. We would like to reflect on both the questions. I will start with a question from the gentleman. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. First of all, about the compliance, we have to delineate from the outset the administrative part of the AML-CFT system and the criminal part of the AML-CFT system. So in terms of compliance and in terms of the work done by the FCMC and other 10 supervisory and control institutions that are prescribed in our AML-CFT law, like the Consumer Rights Protection Center or Latvian Collegium of Sworn Advocates. These are the supervisory and control institutions that control and supervise whether the administrative requirements, such as the CDD and KYC and all the other information is gathered relating to the client, whether the suspicious transactions are reported to the FIU, etc. All the obligations that are prescribed by the AML-CFT. So this is the administrative part of the AML-CFT compliance system. And the FIU is technically not part of that system. We are part of the criminal system of the AML-CFT framework. We used to be under the supervision of the public prosecutor's office. Now we are independent institution of direct administration, and we report directly to the government. Why I'm saying this is that we might not be the most proficient ones to talk about what Latvia has taken over from other European countries in terms of compliance and the framework of administrative AML-CFT system. But in terms of the work of the FIU, there have been many things in the latest years. First of all, as I already said, we gained more independence, and the FIU, due to its status and due to its powers and responsibilities as an institution and its actual core function, it needs to be independent because it acts as a buffer between the private and the public sector. And to enforce that function in a better way than before, than prior to all of these amendments and prior to all the money laundering scandals that Latvia was hit by. One of the amendments that we also took over from the experience of other countries around the globe was the establishment of public-private partnership platform, where we can direct and lead the cooperation between the public and the private sectors in the field of anti-money laundering. Even today and yesterday we had 2 meetings with 2 different banks where we provided feedback on their reporting, the quality thereof, the dynamics thereof, and how well their STRs can be used for disseminations to the law enforcement.
Sorry, I just break in. I think it's very interesting what you have to say, but it also sounds very complicated. Is it?
We work with this every day, and probably I will just, in terms of what we have done, yes, these are just a few of the issues that FIU Latvia has done to enhance our compliance and overtaking it from other EU member states or European countries.
And again, I interrupt, and it's not to be against you or anything like that. On the contrary, I think it's very good, but don't you think companies find it very complicated to be part of this, what suddenly to me sounds like a very complicated process? I mean, most likely, we know that the companies would just like that, hey, yeah, stamp, done. Right?
Absolutely. It has to deal with this other side of the compliance, which the businesses and the investors do not usually work with. They are stopped at this first part, the administrative part of the AML-CFT framework and opening of the bank account, etc. And that's why I wanted to turn with this criminal part of the AML-CFT framework to the question of Mr. Andris Lazdiņš about that we see that there are many money laundering investigations, bribery investigations being started, and where's the result, where are the convictions, and is the money being confiscated? As you probably saw on the slides of Ms. Nuotinga, in the latest recent years, there have been a huge growth in criminal proceedings initiated based on the money laundering charge, the same as convictions and the STRs received by the FIU, and dissemination sent by the FIU to the law enforcement authorities. So if we are not seeing anything yet, we expect to see more of that, more of actual enforcement in the future. And with that, I would like to end my part, and I think my colleague Toms has something else to say as well.
Good day to everyone. Shortly, not as long as he did, to refer to Andrew's question, we would like to see instant results as well. But this question goes in hand to hand with what Zlatko mentioned on prioritization in the future. And I think the answer was already given by Ilse previously during her presentation. It's that we're still dealing with the heritage problems, and we think this might be prolonged for next 2 or 3 years, and only then we will be able to put our hands on actual problems or to look forward in the future and work with things that we would see that we need to work with, which is, for example, corruption and public procurement. But at this point, we have our hands full with the previous problems that come from certain effects. So 2-3 years, I think starting from then, we will see instant results. And
you were also mentioned, Kasper, so if you have some comments, then we go to the second round of questions.
Punishment. Yeah, well, on the crime and punishment, I'm not. That's not on my table. But from how do we learn from other countries and from other systems? Previously, I was stationed in Frankfurt. Therefore, there was a huge storm I had to survive when all the gray list was coming up and so on and so on. Therefore, I obviously met with the Commerzbank and Deutsche Bank AML people, and they actually were able to evaluate our legislation and they mentioned some points that could be changed and what is okay, and overall the feedback from the big banks was okay. Your legislation part is fine. The implementation part and justice part is something that you need to work on. And obviously we drafted up, and what we do is the same through our LIA's international offices. We draft up some proposals that we see is important for investors. So we do not just bring up to the Ministry of Economics, for example, the problem. We already bring up the solutions, how different countries solve those problems. Whatever is it the bank account, is it the COVID-19 entry-exit permit, or whatever is there that is very important. We try to evaluate the different approaches, try to combine and to see how Latvia is or is not similar to, like, example, we cannot take all the compliance from China and implement it because, well, obviously it would not work. But then we take the similar countries and look at their models, and then we write up, let's say, our proposals to changes, and then through the Ministry of Economics we propose those changes and engage in working groups to try to make more and more friendlier for investors environment.
Okay. I would just like, I'll come back to you, but Reinhold, you've heard this discussion now. I mean, are you becoming more interested in being an investor here or less? just make a clear answer and just remember that you're sitting far away and nobody could come after you.
That's the good thing. Yeah, actually, interesting thing is that what I already said before, we don't have a big issue with those compliance regarding the banking sector and anti-money laundering and things like that. Our biggest obstacle for investing further in this country is really the gray economy, and that there is, in our feeling, almost no prosecution or follow-up to the cases we see in gray economy. And those are not only small cases we see, it comes in a whole chain from the financing from a project, then tendering, then going on to buying goods without VAT, and then it goes to envelope salaries. And that's for us at the moment what we see, because that's also increasing now in the Corona crisis. That's the biggest challenge we see. And the follow-up, as far as I know, mainly for most of those cases is done only by the State Revenue Service. And I think they are not in the position to do this. And my question, or maybe question to FIU, is maybe that could be a new field of what you can cover, this gray economy, and what to do against those financial crimes. So for us as an investor, but I think that's also dependent, of course, in the industry you're working on. Other industry, you will not have that big issue with that. But I think that comes also to the general view on compliance, because if people, our employees, ourselves, see that there is no follow-up to gray economy and to envelope salaries, for example, then I think it's very difficult in Latvia as a whole to develop a culture of compliance.
Thanks a lot for that, and I see that there's some comments coming up from here, but I would also like to elaborate before that. Moderator can just do what he wants, right? Because you bring up this with the grey economy, you brought up this here with prosecution or lack thereof, and sorry for bringing up this story. Some of you might have heard it before, right? But when I came here first time, it was 27 years ago, in previous century. And I didn't know much about Latvia, so I was told that sort of the main problems in business in Latvia, that was grey economy and corruption. Then go fast forward to 2020, and main problems are mentioned: grey economy, corruption, in a different way, I think. I think the whole thing has come a long way, but I also often ask myself this year, what about the court system? Why hasn't anything been done? It's been a quarter of a century, it's been 30 years since independence, but it seems to be moving at a snail's pace. If somebody wants to address that, feel free to do so, but I should also notice that Santa had a comment that she would like to give, and Zlata, you also had something. So let's take it in that order, then perhaps to FIU, address what Reinhold had to bring up.
So just coming back maybe also to those international standards, and actually that was the exercise we were through the FATF process when was the Moneywell recommendations to assess the FATF standards we have applied to our all AML compliance environment, and that also was a lot of them also touched upon the prosecution, enforcement. And those are the ones actually now put in the plan where the most emphasis now is to really bring those issues much more forward with the understanding how to make those courts, prosecution, investigation, and enforcement, court system, everything to finalize. Not just to find out where some suspicion or some crime happened, but how to prosecute and bring that to the court. And I believe, this is if we talk about the priorities, this should be the one. Actually, also, I believe this is put in our long-term plan for we call it Moneywell follow-up plan. But this is actually, I believe that also not just the words put in the plan, but also some actions already been there.
Zlata?
Yeah, I think we I think from the discussion, what is coming, I have two observations. One, can we wait for another 3 years to actually tackle the corruption and the grey economy crimes? I mean, we as an investors, can we wait for so long, taking into account that we already waited for many years? This is one. And the second question or maybe observation is we do all understand that the public procurement is the source, potential source of the corruption mechanism as well. So, and here the instrumental is the KYC and the process which is going through, I mean, this primary process. And standardization of this process, and again, I was trying to say this already, but I would like to emphasize once more that the more standardized approach is taken not only by the bank, by KYC utility, and centralized utility, the more other private institution, public institution is joining the same club, how to evaluate their clients, the more we could come to the compliance culture, because otherwise there is no way how we could balance those activities at all.
And FIU, if you had something to what Reinhold brought up.
Yep. So I think not the answer, but the baseline is a risk-based approach. What you mentioned, 27 years ago, we had the same problems as we do now. Why is that? It's because we didn't have risk-based approach. We heard 27 years ago, everybody knew about those problems. Everybody talked about them as they do now. But while doing a little focus on those problems, trying to solve those problems here, we didn't see what was actually going on. And this goes hand to hand with what Ilza showed you in the first slide, the duality of Latvia's risk profile. So there's national predicate offenses, like the ones you mentioned, and the other one is regional financial center, all the cash flows. 3 years ago, Moneywell told us about the second one. So all the focus was put on the second one and no resources. By no, I don't mean no, but with minor resources left on the national predicate offenses, everybody was combating the regional financial center. And now we're back to the same problem. We're still dealing with the heritage problems here. And we don't have few years, but I don't think there's a good answer for this because there's no solution. We have to do everything at once. We have to put more focus on the first thing and then deal with the second thing. And again, hopefully it's going to be faster than 2 or 3 years, but in 2 or 3 years we will have the power to look forward, to combat the national problems and make a clean and better environment for investing here.
Let's see if you can solve these problems before there is a vaccine for corona. Let's make it into a competition. Anyway, sorry about that. I think I should bring it back to the audience. I'm a little bit surprised from before that there was not so much reaction. I thought there would be many people if not exactly hating the ones sitting up here, but then having quite a bit more to say. Then again, you are members of FICIL. Perhaps this has been discussed, or some of it has been discussed a little bit too much. Nevertheless, I would like to bring up again, if somebody has, and the more concrete an issue you have, the more concrete should also perhaps be the answer. Jens? He needs a microphone, yeah. Sorry. No, sorry, Maris, if
I Jens Kras, FICIL board, happen to be also member of the SCB Bank. But I have a very concrete question to our FIU colleagues. You mentioned a couple of times 3-4 years or 2-3 years. My question is, what do you need from us, from the government, to make it happen in 1 year that we start? Please tell what it is, and maybe we can bring that message to the Prime Minister. You need more resources, you need more people. What do you need from us?
Yeah, and sorry if I missed you. Please, let's hear what you have.
And I will do a very short follow-up. But first of all, it is so good that now our law enforcement agencies are in the hands of reputable, clear, and open to communication leaders. I think that is extremely important for the investors community in general. But And also, just to follow up, so what do actually investors want? Okay, because that was what Ilse also said, also like, tell us what you want. And I think I will speak for many of them here, and very good to hear 5 times, counting on Ilse's noting speech, there was the word balance. And 2 times on your speech, dear head of the FCMC, the balance. Yes. And how do we achieve the balance? Just 4 quick things, extremely quickly. Communication with those who want to communicate and who communicate in good faith. Okay? The other thing is this consult first, right? Again, those who, and the professional challenge here is to understand who are really wanting to have the consultation and who use it as an excuse. Then, objectivity. Objectivity, it's very nice to have standard template decisions. Yes, and similar cases have to be resolved similarly. But what investors want to see is really that the institution has looked at their case, their situation, and they want to feel it from the decision. And when it comes to the penalties, the investors would like, yes, we know that penalties have increased, let's say, especially in banking sector, we know that, let's say, 5 years ago, for the similar breaches, let's say, let's say 1 unit, and nowadays it's 20 units, for more or less the same breaches. But what the investors look at it, and what they would like to feel when it comes to penalties. From the penalties, the proportionality, and also there is an option to have agreement. Yes, administrative agreements is what the institutions already use, but that is again a possibility, let's say, to acknowledge the breach, but to reach an agreement. I mean, that was just a comment, but since we observe so much of those, I just wanted to make this summary. Sorry.
Yeah, fine with me. Thanks a lot. It sounded concrete, which is what I really like here today. So was your question is, yeah, what do they want? FIU, what do you want?
It's an excellent question. I asked it myself every single morning when I get out of bed, and there is no answer because it can't be done. The process, all the wheels in the process, it's FIU, it's law enforcement, it's prosecution, it's courts. It can't be done in 1 year, unfortunately. Yeah, there's no answer. There's something that Polis wanted to add on this.
Yeah, it's not that bad that we're not working on domestic cases at all together. It's just our main focus is to deal with the legacy that was left to us because of all of the years of reckless servicing of non-resident shell company accounts. But we are still working on domestic EU and Latvian predicate offenses as well. And as Ilse identified herself, the risk profile of Latvia is dual. We have the risk profile that stems off our former status as a regional financial center, but the domestic crimes and the crimes committed in the European Union, where we can actually get the perpetrators of the crimes themselves, they are certainly on our agenda. We would like to be more focused on them in the future, but it's not like we're not working on them at all. So that's probably something from a good side. And in terms of the more allocation of resources, I think it will be covered by Ilse. And if something is necessary from FICIL, and thank you very much for stepping up with that question, I think Ilse will cover this. Thanks.
Just to add, Ilse had to run because she's asking for more resources.
Okay, very good. See, sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. Yes, please. Microphone needed somewhere.
Hello, I'm Mattis Kukains. I'm a lawyer here, and I'm also here on behalf of the Norwegian Chamber of Commerce. I'm the president of SAME. I just have a real-world example that we as lawyers find very annoying. For instance, in a transaction, let's say our office is representing a seller of an asset or a property or a company. We sign agreements with the buyer. Let's say we set up an escrow account. And then the agreements are signed, we're ready for the money to be paid or paid into the escrow. And then the bank asks us about, if we're representing the seller, the origin of the buyer's funds. And we think this is a little ridiculous because the funds are already in the same bank's accounts. Didn't the large bank already check, you know, the origin of these funds or their clients' funds? And we've had that happen multiple times. For instance, if you have at a large bank an escrow account, and then from the same bank funds are transferred into escrow, and at that point, the same bank asks us, you know, the parties of the transaction about the origin of the funds, and it should be the bank's duty that these funds are clean. I think that would help in the situations that if monies are at a large bank in Latvia, we can assume that those funds are clean. I think that would just help parties in transactions. And these, I'm not talking about money being transferred from Belize to Latvia. The money's already at a large bank account in Latvia. And another thing for the financial investigation unit, I think it would be great if you look into Riga Satiksme, you know, something's getting laundered there, something was laundered there, something's dirty there, and that would give a good signal to society that you are looking out for our interests. And I'm asking that question because it piggybacks on an issue that some of our manufacturing clients at the Norwegian Chamber face. They have, for instance, Orkla, they have a factory in Adaži, and they need to get workers there from Riga. But Riga Satiksme only goes this far, then a local, you know, Adaž transport provider has to do something further. Because Riga Satiksme was looted, you know, they can't work together to get workers from Riga to Adaž, etc. You know, so I'd like you guys to comment on Riga Satiksme, and I think that should be looked into as well. And my first question is, if monies are in a large bank in Latvia, can't we assume they are somewhat clean?
You also managed to get a little bit around this here about bank accounts, but then again, as a lawyer, you know how to cheat somebody like me, right? But anyway, perhaps we're a little bit, I wouldn't say off subject here, but I like this here that it was concrete. The first one about bank accounts.
So if the transactions actually, the transaction happens within the same bank, definitely, of course, the same bank should know the customer of this bank. But if the funds come in from other bank, but that doesn't mean, you know, it's the bank should know where the funds come from. It might be the local bank, it might be European bank, but that's the responsibility of the bank to check whether the funds coming in is the source of funds is fixed, is sort of known.
And FIU, I like this with Satiksme because it's super concrete.
It is super concrete, thank you. And for that reason that it is so concrete, we cannot comment on our work. But as I already tried to explain in the beginning about the criminal part of the AML-CFT framework, we are the institution that informs the police or the Corruption Prevention Bureau or the SRS, Tax and Customs Police Service, and based on the information that we disseminate to them, they initiate criminal proceedings. I do not know for sure what is going on in the law enforcement authorities that investigate these issues, but the pre-election campaigns mentioned very often publicly that there are 30 to 40 criminal proceedings regarding potential corruption that happened in various structural units of Riga municipality. So when the criminal proceedings have already been initiated, the FIU being involved in it is very limited. Where we get our information from, in 99% of the cases, based on the AML-CFT law, we get it either from the FIUs across the world or from the obliged entities that are prescribed by the law. Those are banks, other financial institutions, and certain designated non-financial businesses that have to report their suspicions about money laundering to us. And based on that, we work with that information, we perform financial intelligence activities, we check the databases, we ask information from other financial intelligence units around the world, and then when we have a case and we have suspicions enough that a criminal offense might have been committed, we can issue an order freezing funds and disseminate the case to the law enforcement authority for criminal investigation and later on for prosecution, and if everything goes well and the crime has actually been committed, for conviction in court. But if the criminal proceedings have already been initiated, the involvement of the FIU is somewhat limited because it usually goes the other way around. Like the information flows from the FIU to the law enforcement authorities. And about this concrete specific case, unfortunately, we are prohibited from commenting more in detail.
Then I would like to bring up an issue that was also there quite a long time ago, actually, but that puzzled me a little bit. That was this year, but that it seems regulations in Latvia and Lithuania are very different from each other. Again, I'm quite naive about this here, but I think I can understand that you will not have the same compliance rules in all of the EU countries, even though I would imagine there could be some sort of aligned measures and so on. But I can understand that they're different because they have different issues coming up. But then tell me, why could we not have similar rules in, let's say, the Baltics? Does anybody have a good one for that, Santa?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also maybe you have heard that there is those European initiatives coming up to have the common approach. And already now the European Banking Authority have established a specific body to regulate also the AML, pan-Baltic on a European level. But also I should say that those common standards are already like international, and there is a bit of myth that maybe a year ago in Lithuania there was a bit different risk approach and different maybe some kind of also execution of compliance. But also what I see and hear from my colleagues now in Baltics that the standards now are very much aligned. As also, it's just from my perspective, as I am dealing with the Baltic supervisors, and I see also like big banks working in all Baltic countries. We have established the pan-Baltic colleges to work from synchronized way, and that from that perspective I see that already today, and as I said already previously, my colleague also is stating that actually they are dealing with absolutely the same issues today.
Oh, okay. Because I think that would be definitely an advantage for here, right? There's no reason for why Latvia should stick out. I really don't see that. We still have some time. Any more issues that we should deal with? Audience? Audience is happy? Except they're, oh, very good, thanks. Please.
Hello. My name is Arnis Pauks, and I'm chairman of the board of Finnish Chamber of Commerce. So, coming to this discussion, I thought, well, it's a very good topic, the value of compliance, what is Latvia's competitive advantage. And all I hear, there are a lot of problems, and there are a lot of solutions how to solve them, but I didn't hear about advantage. So I would like to ask my question to Kaspar Roškalns. So what is, in your mind, what is Latvia's competitive advantage in value of compliance?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Pretty easy. When we see this compliance culture implemented, we see how we raise up in the ease of doing business rating, and obviously this is easier for us to attract investors from OECD countries, because if we do not have this compliance culture overall in the longer run, then the investors more or less will try to come from if we look from Latvia, then from the east. However, we definitely know that there is going to be risks involved in that. So to get more and more OECD investors, the compliance culture is definitely gonna help. If we can promote that we are already there, this is one advantage. The major problem, let's say, is that currently we are very tight on the rules, but not all the Europe is the same. And then the question are, if we let's say clean our households and we're the best and the greatest, then everybody in Europe should do that too, because otherwise that's kind of not fair. And this is again some of the problem and potential next step. Then when we deal with those issues and we will have, let's say, process how to investor comes, we screen them, we have 10-point initiative, whatever, 20-point blank, they fill it out, we send it somewhere, it's all online. Obviously, all the banks know what are the risks, they pitched proposals for the client, everybody is happy. But then still, if in the Europe we'll have countries who will not be compliant, again, this will create risks, and will all together, the compliant countries, let's say, so will have to put the pressure, so we'll have overall the similar approaches, the similar legislation in all across the Europe.
Thank you.
And audience, anything else at the moment? In the back, yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Artz Ezupets. I'm from State Revenue Service, and I wanted to address maybe issue. It was brought before about envelope wages, because it's quite important issue for investors. And the thing is that a few years ago already, the payment of envelope wages was criminalized as activity. And starting from 2019, already quite few criminal cases have been initiated. So moving forward, I think this issue should be resolved, or the payment of these envelope wages should steadily decrease, which is expected. I think that should somehow make feel more comfortable for investors.
Anyone has
Sounds
a comment
good,
to that?
but do you have enough resources for that? Because we really like what you're saying.
I'm not a representative of tax or customs police. I'm from anti-money laundering department. It's just like common information I wanted to share, just so you know that there's steps have been made, actions are taken, and also there's a lot of effort on tackling the cash flow. So if there is no cash flowing across the border, also it's already more problematic to pay these envelope wages. So basically the problem is addressed from many angles, and results, as any results, if there is a new legislation, it has to be tested. So we cannot expect criminals to stop doing their business next day after the legislation has come into force. So when we're gonna have already some some case decisions, then I think the criminals will see that this can be punished, this can be investigated, and they will stop just paying the envelope wages, and that also decrease grey economy.
Any comment from up here? Not at the moment. I would like to bring up one more issue, and perhaps just one more issue. I sort of look around, I cannot be sure, I'm not a psychologist, I cannot figure out how people feel, but when I look at it, it looks as there are some people who need a cup of coffee, right? I know I need one myself, quite frankly. But it was actually brought up a little bit by Kaspars, but I think we should try to perhaps address it, if not all of us, then several of us. What about this here with companies coming from Belarus? Opportunity, yes. Problem, yes. But what about it? Is it good? Is it bad? Okay, Ilse is back. Would you start?
I can start, because it was yesterday when I was discussing with different authorities how I see this. And I think it's very important, and I want, and FIU is trying to support all authorities or institutions that are in kind of like trying to attract those Belarusian companies, I do not think that this will cause a problem. This is more opportunity for us to test what's bad, what's good, what kind of requirements we are applying towards such companies that come from, probably we historically we always seen that type of country as Belarus, Ukraine, or Moldova, more high-risk country than, let's say, Germany or Denmark or whatever. However, we are talking about particular companies, real business, IT companies, as far as I understand, and this is the time when we can, one thing, support politically. That is one very important message from myself. Another thing, to test whether the requirements that has been put by banks towards the such clientele is always proportional, is always fair. And therefore, I suggested to the Prime Minister's office that maybe we should make some kind of sandbox for those companies to test what kind of requirements are there, for FCMC to give a comfort for banks, how to onboard those clients, for banks to basically to define the rules for those companies so that they know what to expect, what kind of documents to prepare. And I think this was taken on board, and I hope that it will be working, and Kaspars will be able to say, yes, that's a success story. We competed with Lithuania, who is also trying to attract them, and we won this competition.
Any others of you comments on this? Kaspars, follow-up or Santa, what do you think?
In this case, I probably can talk for some time, but I definitely see this a very good test for because overall the companies are okay. They're IT companies that the IT sector is missing the talent, so that is an opportunity. However, definitely there will be some tries to maybe launder money, or maybe some bad apples will be in the bucket. Therefore, we'll be able to test the system, how easy it is to sort them, how the agencies, different agencies can work together to understand where is real business behind and where is just a truckload of money. And to get this opportunity, and I truly believe that we have a chance against Lithuania for 100%, because they had just the sales offer is there that hey, come, but even they cannot produce visas, so we're on that part we're okay, and I think this will implement and be a very good case study for a longer run, how to implement and some lessons learned from this case to deal with next time, to deal with investors in the longer term.
I'm absolutely also supporting that as a really good test example, and we also have very close hands-on approach now with the banks, with Kaspars, and trying to understand what kind of comfort we can provide for the banks. And definitely this might also trigger the next level of doing that kind of businesses tested with this Belarusian company. So definitely this is a very good opportunity for both to attract the investment and also to test how the system actually now works.
Follow up? Yeah, sure.
If I may jump in, I think I don't know whether my colleagues told the main message that I wanted to raise here. I think this is not only the test case for the government, for the LIA, I don't know, FCMC, FIU or whatever, but it is very good test case after government has made its tasks, its homework. We are not in a gray list. We have made all the recommendations by Moneyval and FADF happen. Right now, this is test case for private sector. How to apply compliance requirements proportionally, how to apply them honestly, fairly, This is a test case when the banks will be able to show that they truly understand what is risk-based approach. And I don't agree, sorry, Kaspars, that this will be an opportunity for some criminals to try to launder money through that kind of like our welcome to the Belarusian companies, because I think it's something how we can show to other countries, to some companies from other countries, what kind of lessons we learn through this restructuring process. If those companies would see that as a very big surprise, that we are not accepting offshore companies as the chain of their, I don't know, some payment structures or something, then we can tell them why we are not accepting, why this is bad for overall competition, for overall stability of financial sectors. This is something how we want to basically to raise the bar, not only for us ourselves, but also for other countries, for other foreign companies. And this will be a great example. If we will succeed, I think I would open up champagne, because it's something that shows that not only we implemented all those requirements, but we also were able to move forward with some future look.
And when you open the champagne, feel free to invite me also, yeah, no problem.
Definitely.
I would like then, I think actually going to some sort of finishing line and ask you, Reinhold, with this here. And again, just remember that you're sitting far away, right? Not to worry. Do you trust that the Latvian authorities can handle Belarus, Belarusian companies?
Well, probably that's quite a new question coming up now with more force. We are facing different issue with Belarusian imports. So Belarus always triggers something else in my head, which has to do with carbon border adjustment and things like that, but that's a complete different topic. But, well, yeah, I agree with Ilse that can be really a test case if Latvia can deal with things like that. And, yeah, so let's see. But maybe let me add another final comment regarding this topic I raised before, grey economy. I agree with some other people saying 2 or 3 years is quite a long time, and yeah, we will see how this will improve in the next 2 or 3 years. But maybe in that time we will look somewhere else for our investments where the level of compliance is still higher. In that case of grey economy, but of course we will observe any positive development.
Okay, very good. And then I've been scribbling down various things as we went along, trying to make some sort of conclusion out of this here. I would have liked to make some, you know, concrete, super smart bullets and so on. That's what I don't have, but still I think I can, you know, try to sum up a little bit. I would like to start with down there in the middle, from the, I think it was you, yeah, the Finnish chamber. Very good that you actually brought us back to this about the advantages, and where perhaps we're sitting a little bit thinking, oh yeah, what exactly are our advantages? Allow me to take advantage of, if I may put it like that, my own experience here, right, of so many years. I'm still very happy about what I've seen in the past few years. This year that institutionally, I think Latvia has been strengthened, and strengthened very, very significantly, right? Many more resources and a much newer and more aggressive approach at the financial intelligence unit. FCMC, same thing, new leadership, strengthening of their activities, new leadership at the investment agency, new leadership at the Central Bank of Latvia. Does that change Latvia then from one day to the next? Rhetorical question, to which the answer, of course, is no, it does not. Will it change it over time? I'm quite sure that it will. Will it be easy to see? No, right? And again, if this here was easy, we wouldn't be sitting here today, because it would have solved itself. And therefore, I also think that perhaps one of the most important things, even though it's one of the saddest things, that is to take one of the comments from Tom's, right? This here with the legacy problems. Yeah, there's no doubt that Latvia is suffering from that. It had a very lenient approach to offshore banking back in the 90s and into the early 2000s and so on. And the country is paying the price for that, right? Let's face it, let's be honest, and sorry if I annoy you and so on, but it's going to be a while before people will think of Latvia as, oh yeah, you know, free, open, nice pleasant, democratic, and so on country. It fulfills many of those things, but not if you ask people in the West. We have a long way to go, and it's uphill. What can I otherwise take away from me with this here sort of in a more concrete sense? Yeah, we just have to look at that these old issues, they're still there. And it's not satisfactory, right? The grey economy, corruption issues, and this also one about the honest versus the dishonest companies. It's a huge issue here, I think, and still nobody has been able to solve it. I cannot solve it there myself either. We have to keep it in there, though. I was very happy to hear, though, that practices in terms of the Baltic countries are becoming more aligned. I think that's a very, very good step forward. I still had this idea of that one could make a handbook in terms of compliance. Well, most likely you cannot, right? If you could, then you had done it. I still hope that, you know, something more will be done about this year. And we heard about this potential ombudsman. Yes, please, go ahead. Why not? Otherwise, I will just say that I hope that the state institutions here will continue, that you at FICIL will continue your work. There's no doubt that this year is very much welcome and is very much needed. And I sort of think, okay, how to finish with this here? Did I do my job today? No, I'm not sure, not well enough, right? But I'd like to finish then off with saying, I came up with, there's a quote from one of my own professors once back when I was in university, and we were dealing with some topic that was just so complicated that even the lecturer didn't really understand it. So he used a term that we're all still confused, but at a little bit higher level now. And that's perhaps how I think about it. So we didn't solve the problems of the world. Wasn't to be expected, perhaps. I'm still very happy that you would be here today, that you would endure these almost 2 hours with us. And I'm super happy to my panel, physically present or present via Zoom. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all of us, I would say, and I really hope there's some nice black coffee outside for all of us. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you.